Hello, welcome to the historic city of Carlisle. We're here for the start of stage 2 of the 2016 Tour of Britain. The riders have got some pretty tough terrain ahead of them as they head through the Lake District towards Kendal. Now yesterday they had to cross the border to get here after the Grand Départ in Glasgow. Under thankfully sunny skies, 124 riders from 21 different teams rolled out of Glasgow's George Square for the Grand Départ of the 2016 Tour of Britain. Ahead of them, 161.6 kilometres of racing to Castle Douglas. Out on the road, signs of summer success in Rio. Sir Brad's gold glasses perhaps being outdone by the golden shoes on Sky's Italian sprinter Elia Viviani. Signs too of an early crash on the bloodied knee of Viviani's teammate Ian Stannard. A five-man breakaway had formed almost as soon as they'd left Glasgow. Two riders from Ampost Chain Reaction, Jasper Bovenhaus and Emil Wastine, were joined by three Brits, Tom Moses of JLT Condor, NFTO's Johnny McAvoy and Pete Williams of One Pro Cycling, who finished last year's tour with both the sprint and the climbing jerseys. However, it was the rangy Dutchman Bovenhaus who took a clean sweep in the three sprints on stage 1 to snag the Yodel Sprints jersey. The competition amongst the break for the Skoda King of the Mountains point was a different affair though. Pete Williams was motivated to get the jersey once more, even though Belgian Wastine was perhaps a little bit too keen to stop him. On the day's last climb, training partners Moses and Williams duked it out, but it would be the One Pro man who'd pull on the black jersey on the podium at the end of the day. Further back, the big World Tour beasts were taking it pretty easy in the peloton. Marcel Seberg and Rowan Dennis finding time for a bit of a chat. But back in the break, Wastine hadn't dispensed with the over-exuberance and tried and failed to get up the road on 3 separate occasions. He'd be the first escapee to be reeled in by the bunch before the remaining 4 were caught with less than 10 kilometres to go. Trek Segafredo and Lotto Soudal began to dictate the pace, alongside One Pro Cycling. Team Sky and Team Dimension Data playing a bit of a waiting game further back. But being there may have cost them, as a crash in the final corner took out both Elia Viviani and also Mark Cavendish. It left the pocket rocket Caleb Ewan to try to take the stage from the gorilla himself, Andre Greipel.
Here goes Greipel now, Greipel on the right, and it's Caleb Ewan that's in the wheel of Greipel. Can Ewan take it off Greipel? The line is getting closer now. He's looking for it, here comes Greipel. Greipel takes it, first place on the line from Caleb Ewan, the Australian. So here is the result, Greipel getting it from Caleb Ewan, and Sinkeldam third, Ricci fourth, Nizola fifth, and Ruffoni sixth.
With me here in Carlisle, and in fact all this week for the 2016 Tour of Britain, is newly retired pro Janto Barker. You're not missing the road, are you?
No, mixed feelings, but I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, on the road with us is a different experience, I can tell you. Now look, your former colleague, Pete Williams, did very well in the breakaway yesterday. Now, he would have liked to have come away with 2 jerseys, as he did in last year's Tour, but he's still got the Skoda King of the Mountains jersey.
He's not a greedy man, he's a competitive man, and you know, he will fight for. It's not obvious which jersey he's actually going to get, depending on who's in the break with you. It could have been the Sprints jersey, but as it turned out, he was going well and he took the Mountains points. The
break worked really well for quite a long time because you had 2 guys there from Ampost Chain Reaction and then 3 Brits, 2 of whom in Pete and Tom Moses are training partners.
Absolutely, and I don't know if you noticed through the coverage that they were pretty much riding all single file, which is team time trial mode. That's actually the fastest and most efficient way to cover the ground, so they rode smart and they did a good job.
Emil Wastine tried to get up the road from them 3 times and failed, and he was the first one to be caught by the peloton. Eventually, the entire break was caught at less than 10 kilometres to go until the end of the stage, and then it was a bit of a waiting game amongst the sprint teams.
Yeah, it was a very difficult one because with the smaller teams, they're all thinking we need to make our effort count, we need to do it as late as possible, and then there's obviously that kind of game of chicken into the last corner, which you know, Lotto really pulled it out of the bag.
They did, but what it meant was Team Dimension Data, Team Sky were further back, and then they get caught up in a crash.
it's always the risk, and actually normally you see that happening to the smaller teams because they don't have the horsepower to actually pull themselves to the front. As it is, there are so many sprint teams, there isn't enough road space for all of them to have their line, and Sky and Dimension Data were two teams which you just said who were missing out at the front of the race. One Pro actually did a great job, getting themselves to the front. Christian House, I noticed, doing a really long turn and a great job for Steele van Hoff at the finish.
Steele van Hoff, yeah, he was in the reckoning right there at the end. Well, let's hear what the riders have to say about yesterday's stage and what they think about today's.
It was a good day. Pete got on the brake straight away. We were both, all three of us were up there ready to go for it, and first one of the day went, and Pete did a good job and got the Mountains jersey. So the rest of us switched into protecting Steele for the final, and it was easiest just to take it from the front and kind of sit on the hips of the big lead out teams. So we did that, and got Steele up there for a top 10.
I think after yesterday, it was a lot of guys had quite a relatively easy stage, so there's still a lot of fresh legs out there, and it's going to be a really aggressive day, and I think there's a lot of nervous guys out there.
Yeah, crashed towards the end, but luckily Dan McClay came through unscathed and still in the reckoning for the sprint finish.
Yeah, it was sad actually. Dan was trying to help me in the finish to get me up in the sprint, which was brilliant of him. So I think if I'd stayed on his wheel, we could have done something, but obviously he'd been riding in the wind a little bit, so it slowed his sprint down. But yeah, he was lucky to not come down. I was as well, but another few chances coming up.
Last season at the Tour of Britain, we were fairly successful. We got guys in the front of the bike race, in the breaks. Yesterday was actually the first time we placed anybody in the top 10 on a stage at the Tour of Britain, so that was kind of a nice little landmark and a good start to the race. But we'll look to do the same again. Obviously today, Carol and Dion, the finish suits them a little bit more than Steele, so it'll kind of be role reversal a little bit, trying to put those guys in the front of the race in the key pinch points of the race, bottom of Windlatter, bottom of the struggle, and then running into Kendal.
Weather's not looking too bad here in Carlisle for the start of stage 2. A little bit grey, Janto, a little bit of wind around because they swerved any wet weather that was forecast in Glasgow yesterday. Do you think it'll catch up with them today?
Well, I think they'll all be hoping not, and no one likes to get wet. But the wind might be a factor depending on the direction and the direction of the course. I know it does wind out a little bit from here. So they'll all be vigilant about that because there are definitely going to be some exposed areas on the course today.
We'll have a look at the stage in a minute, but it does wind through the Lake District, head towards the coast at Cockermouth before then heading back inland, and quite a few climbs, of course, but the main one, Janto, being this one that they call the struggle. Surely it's going to live up to its name.
Yeah, it is. I was just looking at the profile. It's going to be a very difficult course. There is, like you said yesterday, double the amount of climbing in today's stage as yesterday. That is going to catch up, and we measure our effort, most of us anyway, on a format called training stress score, but it should be called racing stress score because it won't just be the last climb, it'll be the accumulation of all those climbs into the last climb and then obviously to the finish. The
struggle ramps up to 25% in some places. Let's have a closer look now at today's stage. For the fourth time, a Tour of Britain stage starts in Carlisle. The peloton will wind through Penrith and Pooley Bridge. The first Yodel sprint is in Heskett, Newmarket, and another in Cockermouth before it gets really lumpy. Cat 2 climbs of Windlatter Pass and Chestnut Hill, and a sprint in Grasmere are merely hors d'oeuvres for the Cat 1 struggle, with gradients of 25%. The 188-kilometre stage then climaxes in Kendal. The Tour of Britain will return to Carlisle this year, as Cumbria and the Lake District host the second stage of British cycling's premier road cycling event. Carlisle is set within some of the country's most spectacular natural scenery, between Scotland and the Lake District on the path of Hadrian's Wall. With a wide selection of landmark buildings and heritage sites, Carlisle is one of the most visitor-friendly cities in the whole country. Home of the famous mint cake, Kendal is a lively market town with specialty shops lining cobbled streets and yards. The South Lakeland town has twice before hosted stage finishes of the Tour of Britain. Historic Kendal was one of the most important woolen textile centres in England, and its numerous yards were once filled with workshops processing cloth, leather and foodstuffs. The ruins of 13th century Kendal Castle overlook the town, which has plenty of things to do. A tempting choice of cosy tea rooms, pavement cafes, traditional pubs or stylish restaurants.
Hi, I'm Alex Dowsett. We're at the Tour of Britain, and here is your commentators for today, Brian Smith and Hugh Porter.
Thanks very much, Alex. Nice to see a nice fresh face doing the presenting. Well, this is the rollout in the centre of Carlisle. The riders on their way down to Kendal today, stage 2 of the Tour of Britain. 188.8 kilometres, 3,700 metres of climbing. It's going to be very, very tough indeed. In the middle in the yellow jersey is Andre Greipel. The question is, will he be in yellow tonight?
That is the question, Hugh, and I know from the past that Andre Greipel can be aggressive, but today's a big ask to hold on to that jersey.
Well, as soon as that red and white checkered flag is pulled in, we will pass kilometre 0, and then the contest is on. 3 very, very tough climbs for the riders to negotiate today. The hardest of all is the struggle that comes around about 25 kilometres from the finish. Also 3 sprints along the way in the Yodel sprint competition. Yeah, nice shot of the castle there here in Carlisle. We've been here before, of course, for stage starts. This is the 3rd time, actually, the stage from Carlisle down to Kendal has taken place. Well, there we are. That is kilometre 0, and the first attack on the left from a rider from Madison Genesis.
Yeah, Matt Cronshaw decides to have a go. Madison Genesis weren't in the mix yesterday and want to try and do something today.
Yeah, riders conscious of the fact how hard the stage is, so if they could slip away in a group and maybe give the big guns the miss, then of course they may stay clear.
A reaction from Wastine from Anne Posh, chain reaction, who was in the mix yesterday.
But this is the group that's trying to form now off the front of the main group. Although they're not quite clear, it is beginning to fracture a little bit.
Many teams involved: Lotto NL, Jumbo, Trek Segafredo, Dimension Data, and the tall figure of Connor Dunn from JLT Condor.
And look, there's the yellow jersey, and that is Greipel coming across the gap. So he fancies a ride in the leading group today.
He realises the danger is there, and we're just getting a slight easement at the front of the peloton. Could this possibly be the breakaway of today?
Well, there's a rich mix of different teams here, and it is noticeable that there are 12 World Tour riders that are in this group at the front.
Still a couple of riders trying to come across there. Noticed that one of the Etix Quick Step riders trying to come across. A lot of waving around, everybody wanting to get involved with this, and again, Lotto NL Jumbo pushing hard in the front.
The big fella on the left is Connor Dunn, the Irishman, in the black. Now, this is the first sprint taking place in Heskett Newmarket, and we've covered 79 kilometres. And on the right of our screen in the yellow jersey, you can see Greipel going for it, and from that angle, it looked like Greipel did take the sprint on the line. And I can confirm that it was a win for Greipel ahead of Connor Dunn, and 3rd place was Nicholas Roach.
Welcome back. After picking up maximum points in the first Yodel sprint, Andre Greipel would go on to do exactly the same in Cockermouth as well. It's after this the parkour really went up with the first climb at Whinlatter Pass. We pick up the action now with Brian Smith and Hugh Porter.
Looking at the breakaway, they're starting to kind of settle down. They're thinking of the climb, they're thinking of the next stage of this race, and you know, they'll go into it together. Whether they get to the top together, I don't think that'll happen. You got to remember, this peloton are still chasing hard. This gap could come down a little bit more, but some of these riders in the breakaway are starting to think of, you know, the attacks that may come on this first climb of Whinlatter Pass, which is 3.3 kilometres in length and averages 4%.
It's a very heavy tree-lined area as well. The Whinlatter Pass threads its way through. Well, that's about the closest the peloton have been to the tail of the leading group. All getting instructions, aren't they, on the radios?
You got to remember that for the teams chasing at the front of the peloton, Hugh, when they get to this climb, they'll be tired as well.
Absolutely.
So with only 6-man teams, the riders in the peloton really have to try and kind of close this down sooner rather than later.
Yep. We're now in Lawton. Sun once again coming out. Just sending the shadows spilling out across the road. Giant Alpecin rider just almost looking to say, well, where are you, boys? And coming through. There's a general sort of just easing here at the moment. The urgency just has gone out a little bit from the front group.
Yeah, they know the climb is coming up. They're trying to save a little bit. One of the riders that has been kind of duck and diving a lot is the experienced Irishman from Team Sky, the 32-year-old, and that's 2 times Vuelta stage winner Nicholas Roach, who has been kind of ducking and diving in this break, and I think we may see him come to the fore from now to the finish, because he'll be wanting to try and kind of break this group up. He's got a very good young BMC rider right next to him, like Vliegen, 22-year-old, 9th in Amstel Gold this year. So not afraid of mixing it on some tough territory. So there is, it's kind of calm before the storm. There's some riders in this group of 15 starting to think that the next stage of this race of possibly breaking up this breakaway.
And you can see there is daylight beginning to appear. It's starting to fragment a little bit. That front group, there's a fracture, significant fracture. Looks like 4 or 5 riders starting to go clear.
Yeah, this was expected on the climb. Still a long way to go, but some of the riders have been tested out. It really depends on how hard these riders want to push on. And yet again, it's the yellow jersey of Lotto NL Jumbo, Bert-Jan Lindemann, putting the pressure on at the front. He's got company of Jacopo Mosca, the 23-year-old Italian, again a trainee, want to show well. So we're getting a mix of experience.
Well, they've all come back together again at the front.
Yeah, Lindemann still pushing on. He wants to try and prize some riders away from this 15-man group, but they're sticking together at this moment. No big reaction from the front of the peloton, but a very hard chase from Movistar and Bardiani now that One Pro Cycling's McCormick and Christian House have kind of done their work, moved back into the peloton, try and recover a little bit, but it's still a hard tempo being set at the front of the 15-man group by Nicholas Roach and the young Wanty Group Gobert rider.
Yeah, well, Nicholas Roach is just revelling in this. He is, of course, a seasoned Grand Tour rider. But Greipel is still up there. Looked as though he was just going to get detached, but he's come back up, sitting comfortably, 3rd in the group. Yes, Viviani then carrying the telltale signs of that crash yesterday when his bike just broke in 2. The big gold medal winner for the Omnium in Rio, and super sprinter extraordinaire. But they really are piling on the pressure. There's an example of all the wooded area about here on the Windlatter Pass, Brian. And the summit of this will bring us out right near to Bassenthwaite Lake. Now, let me just remind you once again, not one of these riders has scored a point in this competition because they were not in the group that was clear yesterday. Looks like Greipel just suffering a little bit near the back there.
Well, Greipel, in fact, he was caught behind there and he's trying to come across to this front group. He wants to stay in front as long as possible. You never know what's going to happen, and he's just tagging on the back of this group. Bert-Jan Lindemann put a big effort there. Vermont's now coming to the front, but you can just see the Wanty Group Gobert rider is being coaxed towards the front by Bert-Jan Lindemann. The pressure is on here, and this group is starting to split up with about 4 riders being detached off the back of it.
And Vermont just swings over as well, and now it's the Wanty Group rider that comes through, and that is Maurice. Maurice then from Belgium on the front at the moment as the line is getting closer. On the line, it's 6 for the win here, down to 1 for the final place in the counters. Maurice at the front, just looking over his shoulder to see who is nearest to him. Good riding here by Greipel. Just spinning that gear nicely at the back, and it's an early charge for the line here from the giant Alpecin man. Oh, close on the line, wasn't it? Very, very close. Well, there's a bit of a kick for you. You can see kicks up straight away here. Ramps up significantly right from the bottom. Now then, are we going to see anybody lose contact on this one? Lotto Jumbo just keeping the back of the group warm there. Picking up a few bottles, of course. Liquid intake today of paramount importance. Well, Culloden, who's on the front, is actually the lowest placed after the first stage in the overall, because he arrived in Castle Douglas yesterday at 1 minute and 54 seconds back. All the rest are, or have started today, within 10 seconds of the yellow jersey, with the exception, of course, of the Dutchman who was with us on the sprints yesterday, who's not in the group. Now here comes Roach on the outside, just beginning to lick the pace up a tad here, dancing on those pedals, coming down the outside, looking right down the road to see where the gantry is, and it is the Wanty Group rider that's beginning to start the sprint. And also a challenge coming from Trek Segafredo, and Roach is not going to contest by the look of it. He's happy to sit up, no doubt saving his energy for a little bit later on. So that looked like Maurice from the Wanty Group, the Belgian, taking the 6 points.
Welcome back. Heading into Grasmere and the final sprint of the day, Andre Greipel will pick up all 3 points again, getting the full house of sprints on the stage to give him the Yodel Sprints jersey at the end of the day. But would he still be in the breakaway as the race culminated? Well, perhaps not, as it headed up the infamous struggle. We pick up the action now with Brian Smith and Hugh Porter.
Culloden is the rider that's been putting all the effort into the front of this 14-man group. Now it's down to 13. Because he's done his effort and he's now going to sit back. But you can just see the gap coming down a little bit now because the team of Dimension Data, Roger Hammond has obviously said Johan van Zyl maybe not having his best day today in the breakaway, but they don't want to lose out in this race. They still got, Steve Cummings, so they want to keep him, in a possible chance of, doing something in the general classification. So the gap is coming down all the time. To the peloton behind.
It could be down to 12 as well, because Andre Greipel is beginning to find the lactic build-up in his legs a little bit too much as this road now does start to rear up. And let's just refresh our memory. It's 4.5 kilometres long, this climb, and the opening first cat ascent of the tour. Oh, Mark Cavendish on the nose of the peloton.
Yeah, they're trying to lead Steve Cummings into the best place possible, and Mark Cavendish doing a very good team job. He was out the back with the rest of the sprinters in one later pass, and he's brought Steve Cummings right to the perfect place on this climb.
So the Manx Missile bringing Cummings up to the front. So a game plan likely to unfurl now then for the Dimension Data, and it looks like Cummings is the man with the plan on his mind.
Connor Dunn, I think it's over for him today. He's picked up some good points in the Yodel Sprints competition by taking 3 second places to Andre Greipel.
Yeah, it's game over then for Connor Dunn. He may well drop into the peloton. Look at this, Cav really pounding on the pedals here. Remember, he comes from the Isle of Man. He'll have done a lot of his training in his early years up the mountain there. But Caleb Ewan, the Australian, alongside him, 2 diminutive, punchy sprinters.
Well, that's what I was saying a little bit earlier on today, Hugh, that Van Zyl maybe not on the best day for Team Dimension Data in the breakaway. And, lovely to see Mark Cavendish. This is what he loves to do. He loves to give something back, and he's giving something back to his teammate, Steve Cummings, by leading the way up this climb. He knows that the stage win is a bit too tough for him, but he's willing to put it on the line for his teammates, Cummings.
Yep. Doing a good job here, Caleb Ewan, isn't he? He's light, of course. He's got little weight to carry on the climb. And he's just bouncing up this one. Really going well. Here we are, 3 riders that have been detached.
This is size for Kaharu Al, and also from the original breaker, Lisa for Lotto NL Jumbo.
Really, really bending over the bars there, trying to lever the gears over. It's been a tough day in the saddle And here we are, the first rider to get picked up from that leading group. He's Coladan, the Italian, and it's the rider from BMC that bridges to him.
Rowan Dennis is right there, and Rowan Dennis is pushing hard for BMC. Also got in tow, you can see Steve Cummings second in this race twice in the past, but it's causing a big reaction from the riders behind.
He looks good, doesn't he, Cummings? I mentioned it a little earlier on, but it's worth reinforcing it. He's just so relaxed, sitting third wheel. He'll know this countryside very, very well indeed, coming from Liverpool originally. And those three look as though they're going away. Another victim here, dropping off the group. And this is Hoekstra. Hoekstra, the latest man to fall back. Picked up some useful points in the earlier climbs, and Mark Cavendish now just slipping back as well. Oh, look at Cav, he's having a chat with somebody here. What's happening there? He doesn't look very happy. I'm just wondering if that spectator said something that he didn't like.
No, maybe he did
Or is it
something
a
he
friend
didn't
of
like.
his?
Yeah, maybe did something he didn't like, but
Yeah. He had time to go back and have a chat with him. Well, look at that, 57 seconds, Brian. It's the first time that we've seen the advantage inside 1 minute.
Yeah, pushing hard on the front, Bert-Jan Lindemans there, Maurice for a Wanty Group Gobert, Roach is there, and Mosca, the Trek Segafredo rider. But it's Gripo's just about to be picked up by the front of the riders from the peloton, and that's Dennis and Cummings.
Yep.
You just see behind that looks like Gasparotto is trying to come across now, or is it one other rider? But also in the mix, some other riders trying to come across this gap to see the reaction from Dennis.
This is the remnants of the leading group. Nicholas Roach is in there, the Irish national champion. You can see him there. Also, Jacopo Mosca, the 23-year-old Italian. There he is on the right, number 206. From Ethics Quickstep, you've got Julian Vermont and number 155. And that is Maurice of the Wanty Group. And Maurice was the man that was first to the summit of Chestnut Hill.
Yeah, so 5 riders, and Tusveld is just behind for Giant Alpecin. Nicholas Roach looks behind, and he'll start to get a little bit worried because he'll know that Cummings and Dennis is there. Dennis has actually dropped Cummings ever so slightly. They're just picking up at Tony Gallopin for Lotto Soudal is there, so a big effort now from Rowan Dennis, the Australian riding for BMC.
What's left of the group, and on the right a struggling race leader. And also in that group, number 155 is Maurice, and number 14, Nicholas Roach. That's the composition of the 5 that are ahead.
So the motorbike just passing up the disintegrated peloton. Riders absolutely everywhere. Still 5 riders in front, only 26 seconds in front of Rowan Dennis for BMC, the Australian. You can see that Dennis is only a stone's throw away from the front of this race now. Just picking up the rider Hoekstra from Giant Alpecin, but he'll soon be onto the back of this this convoy.
Yeah, Hoekstra, I don't think, has he got the power to latch onto the pace of Dennis? If he has, he's going to profit from it. No, he's paying the price there. So he can see the leaders just ahead now. So the junction is going to be made very, very shortly. And that's a perfect time for Dennis to bridge, because that's going to add a lot of extra strength to this leading group. And Roach is looking to the mist to see whether he can see the sign. Looks as though he's just going to start to raise his tempo a little bit here. They're looking for the sign because obviously at the top of this climb there are 10 points. First category ascent, 10 points down to 1. And he's looking to try and nail the first spot. Well, we were talking about this climb on the way over, saying just how hard it is. And I think the shots that you are seeing reflects that. Here comes Dennis now up to the tail of the motorbikes, the camera crew, and of course the commissaire's car.
Yeah, they need to give him a bit of room now and get out of the way now, because the crowd is going to be at the top of this climb, and if the car and the motorbike is there, it's very difficult for Dennis to get through now.
And it looks like Roach is setting himself up to try and lead this out. Maurice is challenging on the right from the Wanty Group. and it shed a couple of riders. One of his Steve animators, Mosca's, lost contact. So around the corner for the line, behind them, and well, from our shot it looked like it was either Maurice or Roach that got that. So in what order it doesn't matter, because that should be enough to give Roach the king of the mountains.
Yeah, look to me as Maurice won to Group Gobert, took maximum points there. Roach was second, Mosca third, Lindemann in fourth, and Vermont in fifth, with Dennis in sixth. So that's enough to give Nicholas Roach. That's enough to give Nicholas Roach the King of the Mountains jersey.
Yep. And there was his chief animator before that line, Mosca, but he lost contact. He's Dennis. Now then, they need to be very cautious on the descent with the mist and, of course, the wet conditions.
Well, Maurice and Roach are just slightly down the road. Dennis now coming up to catch Mosca.
This is the effort by Rowan Dennis. Sheer determination and courage reflecting strongly from the Australian, powering his way across the gap.
This is Tony Gallopin in the group behind with Steve Cummings. Also in here is Dylan Van Baal and Dan Martin. So Dan Martin is not going to do any chasing. Also in this group is Tom Dumoulin from Giant Alpecin. So it's a very strong chasing group here. And also nice to see one of the Wiggins rider, and that's number 24, Mark Christian from the Isle of Man.
Now then, what's happening here? Nicholas Roach slightly detached. Whether he's had a problem, I don't know.
I think he's starting to cramp up. It did look as if the effort there, and he was shaking his leg out. So I did notice that he had a teammate in the group behind. I think it was Ben Swift. I'll just wait and see if we can get some more shots of what's happening behind.
Now that's a useful three that are going away, Brian. Very, very useful indeed. Cummings, Martin, Dumoulin.
We've said this all along, that it's a rider you don't really want to let go, and that's Steve Cummings. He's putting a lot of pressure on this group. He's taking with him Dan Martin from Ethics, who will not do any work because you get Vermont in front. And also the young rider Hoekstra from Giant Alpecin. 15 kilometres to go. Still it's Rowan Dennis doing the majority of the work, and rightly so, because he is the fresher of the riders. All these other riders have been on the attack from the start of today's very difficult stage.
Well, Hoekstra's had a ride of his life, hasn't he? He's been in the break all day, and he's still in contention now.
Yeah, he's kind of hanging on to the tails of Dan Martin and Steve Cummings, and it's a difficult run, and it's lumpy all the way in towards the finish. 26 seconds now. Steve Cummings trying to go across this gap. In tow, he's got Dan Martin and Hoekstra from Giant Alpecin.
Well, if Hoekstra is clinging to those two, for how much longer is he going to cling? Because all those miles in his legs when he's been ahead are going to pay. Here comes Swifty.
Yeah, he realises the danger in Ben Swift trying to come across, and that'll make it even more interesting for Steve Cummings, because they'll have to make a call at some point whether these guys ride with Steve Cummings to come across for the potential stage win. But it's Tony Gallopin straight over the top. Tony Gallopin, he's got some good form. He rode well in San Sebastian. Tom Dumoulin reacts to it now. Hoekstra now getting distance by Dan Martin and Steve Cummings. But just look in front. If you pan up in front of Tony Martin, you'll see that Steve Cummings can see the cars just in front of him. And in fact, this 18 second advantage does look as if Steve Cummings and Dan Martin could be possibly making that across to this group in front.
I'll tell you what, though, Gallopin's going well.
Dan
as
Martin's gone. So Dan Martin has been dropped by Steve Cummings. So Steve Cummings doing a ride here to try and come across to this front group.
But that's exactly what Steve Cummings would like. He doesn't like company. Once he gets in a position on his own, that's where his power really reflects. Martin struggling here then. Yeah,
he's struggling a little bit up here. He had a rider in front, and maybe that's why the call never came out, that in fact Dan Martin was struggling a little bit, wanted Vermont to have the opportunity. So with 13 kilometres to go, Steve Cummings makes the junction.
Oh, what a ride by Steve Cummings. But Martin is a surprise dropped rider here. Climber extraordinaire Martin, former winner Liège, Bastogne Liège, has been distanced, and he's going to get picked up by the remnants of that group.
And this is a trademark attack. Rowan Dennis is smart to it, but this is what Steve Cummings does best. He got his breath, went straight to the front. He's a very difficult man to get across to. And you can see Rowan Dennis right in the point of the saddle trying to come across.
Hasn't got enough lead there. It was a tentative move, but unless he can get the gap, he won't continue. And Rowan Dennis, as you said, very powerful, very strong, and another great time trialer comes back up and brings the group up. He'll have another go.
Well, this will mean that the group behind of Dumoulin and Ben Swift will now have an opportunity to come across, but this is not their last attack from Steve Cummings.
No way. And here we go. The rest are coming back up, clawing their way across the gap. So this group could grow significantly, and Martin is profiting from this. There's Tony Gallopin and there is Martin, so they're going to come across and strengthen the group as well. Tom Dumoulin is there as well.
Yeah, he just looks behind. There's a lot of dead legs in this group. There's two Martins in this group. You've got Guillaume Martin just on the left-hand side, a small rider from Wanty Group, Gobert. You also Dan Martin, the leader of the Ethics Quick Step team. But they're all catching their breath. They're all kind of hanging on here.
He's having a go. I think that's Cummings having a go again.
Yeah, Cummings is in second place at the moment, but I think one of the other riders are already gone. A tactical battle, a battle of wits that's playing out at the moment, but Dan Martin is disappeared up the road as well with them. So it looks as if Vermont was one of the riders that went on the attack, and then Steve Cummings went after him. So we've got two of the Ethics Quick Step riders just in front. Dennis realises the danger, he can't go across, and it looks like the Dan Martin has been distanced, and Vermont and Cummings are down the road.
You're right, it is. Steve Cummings, he still wants to try and get rid of the riders so he's on his own, because that is exactly the scenario that he loves. So it's Julian Vermont now and Steve Cummings into the outskirts now of Kendal.
You can now see with 2 kilometres to go, Julian Vermont being in a breakaway all day today. Steve Cummings, allowing Rowan Dennis to go on in the struggle. Steve Cummings is very good at judging his effort, and decided that Rowan Dennis was riding too hard on that climb, decided to wait until after the climb, came across the front group, decided to bide his time, tried once, tried again, took Vermont for company, but he's very good company, one of these riders that you want in your team, the strong rider. And we're descending now into the last kilometre here in Kendal with an uphill finish. Stage is going to be duelled out here between Steve Cummings of Dimension Data and Julian Vermont of Ethics Quick Step.
And the last shot we saw of the group behind, it was Tom Dumoulin that was trying to go clear, the rider on Team Giant Alpecin, man who won stages in this year's Tour de France and a silver in the Olympic Games in Rio. 1 kilometre to go. There is the sign. Now then, when they turn sharp left in about 300 metres, stand by. It kicks up like a wall in front of them. Now who has got the greatest strength in these two? A little bit of cobble here and a bumpy approach to the left-hander. And behind there is an attack by Swift. Swift at the front of the group that's breaking up as well. They're getting close now to the left-hander that'll line them up for the run to the line. Steve Cummings will know this very, very well indeed. Here it is. And watch how the road rears up. You've got to time your effort here. You could really die if you go too early. Cummings is round in front. Vermont is in his wheel. Right, 500 metres to go, and it's virtually all uphill. Who's got the greatest strength? Who's going to make the move first? Vermont just waiting in the wheel all the time. On a flat sprint, you would say that's a great element of surprise, but on a severe steep climb like this, well, it's not too much of a surprise that he could spring. And clinging to the one side of the road is Cummings, which means Vermont can only come by on Cummings' left shoulder. The crowd are watching it on the big screen. They're going absolutely potty. They want a British victory here. Is it going to go that way? Vermont in the blue, of Ethics Quick Step on the left. The Belgian versus the rider from Great Britain in the white, Steve Cummings. 200 metres to go. Here goes Vermont. Vermont looks as though he's going to go first. Now then, can Steve Cummings respond to this? Vermont's gone away. Steve Cummings cannot respond to the effort from the Belgian. The 24-year-old Belgian, Julian Vermont's going to clear stage 2 here in Kendal at the summit of Beast Banks. Here he comes. Julian Vermont of Ethics Quick Step wins stage 2. And Steve Cummings of Dimension Data and Great Britain comes over the line to finish in second place.
Well, Steve just didn't quite have it in the end, but a very good win. We said both of them deserved the win, and being in the breakaway all day, Vermont just takes the win from Steve Cummings as Nicholas Roach tries to nick away for third place, but they're coming up strong.
Nicholas Roach has distanced himself from the group, looking to try and snatch third place. Looks like Lotto Sedel, Tony Gallopin's making a move. Also, I think that's Martin going as well. Dan Martin looking to try and get third place. Yeah, Martin leading this one out. It really is a demanding, brutal finish, this one. Martin then looking for the third place on the stage as they're coming closer to the line. Gallopin of Lotto Sedel just behind him. And Swift is up there as well. So in third place, it's going to be Dan Martin. Gallopin fourth. And in fifth place, is it going to be Swift? Swift, he might have just lost fifth place on the line. Here's the official results after a demanding stage from Carlisle to Kendal. After being in the breakaway all day, 26-year-old Belgian Julien Vermont powered away from Steve Cummings of Beastbanks to clinch stage 2 in Kendal.
Coming into that finish, when you and Steve Cummings managed to get away, he was really digging deep at times.
Yeah, he was really strong, you know. I was already all day in the break, so I lost already a lot of energy, and but okay, I could do my work, and I just had in my head I wanted to win this stage, and don't get so much opportunities, and if you get one you have to take it, and I'm happy I could do it. I knew this finish from 3 years ago here when Chuba Lake won, and then I had also a good day, and I went for it, and I took it. I'm really happy with it.
After 3 wins out of 3 on the stage, Andrei Greipel becomes the new leader in the Yodel sprint competition. 27-year-old Sandro Maurice takes over as the leader in the Skoda King of the Mountains. The yellow jersey presented by Iceberg goes to Vermont of Ethics Quickstep, who personified strength and class throughout the day. And there are the official standings after 2 days of racing. Vermont leads Cummings by 6 seconds, with Dan Martin third at 1 minute and 4. Long way to go.
What a battle royale that was today on stage 2 of the 2016 Tour of Britain. I'm really pleased to say that with me and Janto right now is the High Five Combativity Award winner, Nicholas Roach from Team Sky. That was brutal.
It was. It definitely was. You know, it was a hard day. The terrain was obviously going to be always hard. But then, you know, the riders make a race hard as well, and today they definitely made the race hard. Strong start, small roads, up, down all day. The bunch always kept us close, and then obviously the rain in the finish over those technical roads with, you know, the climbs, the technical descents, just made a spectacular day, I think, for cycling fans.
Oh, it was a fantastic watch. Was that the plan from the off, Nico, for you to go out and try and get the Skoda King of the Mountains points?
No, that's something I thought only coming into the last 60-70k. Initially, when the gap was around that 4 or 5 minute mark, I was thinking, all right, let's keep everything for GC, just if, you know, maybe this is the right move. When the gap fell down to a minute, I said, oh, might as well make the most of the day and try and get a few points here and there. You never know if I get back in a breakaway sometime during the week. So that was the plan then. And I just kind of went for the remaining 2.
Just very quickly, how did you find the last climb, the struggle? 25% ramps on there.
I won't be very original saying it was a real struggle to get up there, but no, it's definitely a good one. It's, you know, I reckon it's worth a good mountaintop finish one day in the Tour of Britain.
Fantastic. Janto, I mean, it was fantastic to watch today. All sorts of quality riders attacking each other. Special mention to Steve Cummings, who rode incredibly hard almost to the end.
Absolutely. I mean, it was one of the most exciting stages to watch. I'm a fan as well as a rider, well, ex-rider, and you know, watching those gaps come and go, and who was coming across from the peloton, and then who was going to go and lead up from the breakaway was really exciting and great television. So thanks for everyone. Thanks from everyone to you, Nico, for that.
Janto, Nico, thank you both very much indeed. Chapeau as well, by the way, to Julien Vermont. That was an incredibly strong ride at the end to seal the finish and get himself into the yellow jersey presented by Iceberg. That's just about it from us for now. Thanks very much indeed for your company. We'll see you tomorrow for stage 3 in Cheshire. Bye-bye for now.